Hello, my name is Farron Crosby with the University of South Carolina, and I will be presenting on the KWL strategy. First, to describe this strategy, KWL is a discussion organizer that mirrors the process of scientific inquiry. It represents the questions, what do you know, what do you want to know, and what have you learned? I would also go to say it's a great unit organizer, not only for science, but for multiple content areas in order to guide students throughout the unit. How and why does this strategy encourage content literacy? It does so because it models scientific inquiry. This mindset is essential when we're teaching students to interpret content-specific text. When we provide students with direct modeling of this thinking style, their time in content-specific text is much more meaningful. Also, if this strategy is used throughout a child's educational experience, their thinking gets deeper and deeper with each grade level. So if the modeling begins at a young age, by the time they get to middle, high school, they are already thinking very, very much in this inquiry mindset, which is going to help them mostly in their content area classes. So KWL charts like the one pictured are a great way to introduce and close a topic or unit. This chart came from a second grade classroom, so you can see it's very teacher-led, but it holds plenty of information. And what I think is incredible is how many questions they had, and then look at all they included that they learned. That's exactly what you want to see on these charts. Explanation of use. So why use this? This is one of the best ways I have found to model thinking like a scientist and encourage inquiry in students, which I taught science, so thinking like a scientist was a huge thing. But they're mathematicians thinking like a historian. This goes across content areas, which is what makes it such an amazing strategy. Specifically at the elementary level, which is where I taught, we have to model to students what it looks like to ask questions about the world around us in order to create lifelong thinkers and learners. And even though I taught 5th grade, a lot of my students still needed some guiding and some modeling of what this thinking looked like, especially at the beginning of the year. It can also open up a window into students' existing schema and can be a great way to learn more about your students and what they already know. All right. So to prepare to use this strategy, you'd need a skeleton anchor chart like the one to the left. And I call these skeleton anchor charts because you can see they hold no information besides just the unit topic at the top. Keep it clear and blank for when you use this with whole class discussion. And then the chart also shows what students should put in their notebook and complete. Anytime I used these charts in my classroom, students began by creating a personal KWL in their notebook. So when they entered the class, this would be up on the board. They would copy the skeleton chart in their notebook. So you have the unit topic at the top, so students know, okay, once they get used to a KWL, they just know this is what we're thinking about next. That's instantly what their minds go to. And then you have the sections clearly labeled and divided. And another thing is making sure you have enough space. Like this is a skeleton chart just made from a table, but on your actual anchor chart or your smartboard, you're going to need a lot more space. So just keep that in mind. So Fisher described using a read aloud or a shared reading experience to introduce the topic prior to completing this chart with your class. I think there's also value in completing the chart without giving students prior knowledge, just to see what they know on their own. This is a great formative assessment or a pre-assessment to see how you need to structure your unit. And this may be, I taught in upper grade, but a lot of my students had prior knowledge on most of our units, so it was really interesting to see what stuck with them and then where your gaps were. But for younger ages, I think it is crucial to read aloud together before you do the chart, just so that you're not killing yourself trying to get information out of kids because they really don't have anything to put up there. All right, first section would be the K. What do they already know? So depending on the grade level, I like to allow students to record their own responses on the class anchor chart. And I know this gives some teachers the heebie-jeebies to let kids write on the anchor chart, but it gives them such great ownership of their learning. So you see they could write, there are different kinds, animals, talk about the word breakdown. And what I did in my class, I kept a tally of students who were like, I really don't know anything. To me, this was a very valuable portion of doing these KWL charts, because I knew if I had a unit where no one had any context starting out, I had to go a lot deeper in the forefront. When they have ownership of these charts, it's just such a more meaningful experience. And students, another benefit of tallying up these responses that they really don't know anything already, it helps students feel okay that they don't have a context to start with, and that they're not alone, which I think is important because we don't all know everything. That's why we're in school. So, what do they know? Or what do they want to know? Excuse me. So, this is where you can really encourage this inquiry mindset in your students, where they learn to formulate questions. They're going to record their questions about the topic and then tally. I like to tally up the number of students whose question is, what is an ecosystem, or what is the topic at hand? Same reason I record the IDK, because if that's the only question they could come up with, we have a lot of work to do. And I think also one thing, it's important to include all students' questions and encourage all thinking, even if they seem silly or outlandish. As long as it's not disruptive to your class, honoring their thinking is really important when you're working with this strategy, because if you're shutting down their questions, you're shutting down their thinking and their inquiry mindset. Again, the same reason with having students write it, if possible, to give them that ownership. All right. This strategy can pull through the whole unit, and I see a lot of teachers who do it at the very beginning, never look at it again, pull it back out at the end. But I don't think that is the most effective way. So in the beginning of the unit, you're going to complete the know and want to know portions. I like to keep the chart hanging in a very visible place throughout the entire unit. It reminds students of what their questions were, what we were looking at, and I also let students write answers to the questions we've found and stick them on the chart as we go through the unit. So while we're answering these questions, or some questions may be so out there they have to research them individually, but they get to answer them with sticky notes. So why do this? Making it a part of the entire unit kind of pulls this thinking throughout the whole unit. We want to see what we know. We want to ask questions about the world, and that doesn't go away throughout the whole unit. So what I like to encourage is, as you learn more, you just keep asking more questions. There's not an end point. And as you do this, as you continue to pull these through your whole unit, throughout the year, these questions get deeper and deeper because they start to get the point. And like I said, inquiry can't last for one day. It has to be a thinking shift, which is the benefit of this strategy. So what did they learn? This portion of the chart is completed at the end of the unit. And like the other two, I give students time in their notebooks to fill this in before we talk, before we're putting things on my chart. And like the other two, if they can't fill this block in, red flag. There either needs to be some reteaching or some restudying at home. But this portion of the chart, I've had, some coworkers who just find it pointless. They know it. This is a great review right before a summative assessment. So let students fill it in, and they're going to be so excited. They're going to, fill this whole portion up, which is why you need a lot of space for your learned segment. And something I did, I would keep little tallies, if we got repeats, because they're using their notebook and they filled those in. So if we had one like energy transfer is a huge idea, I would always get, 10 people who also had this on their chart. That's fine. Honor that. Put it up. So we're seeing, oh yeah, this is a big point with ecosystems. Another, strategy that you can use, or a way to differentiate this for your room, depending on the independence level of your students, you can let them do this part in small group rotations, one day, and then the next day before your test, or whenever you need it, you can review what they put together. So let's say you have a review day before an assessment. Part of their activities for that is filling this chart in on their own, and then the next day you're having that whole class discussion right before they take their assessment. So my testimony with this, I taught 5th grade science, and this strategy was used with every single unit. Students knew when this was up on the board, yes, what unit are we moving to? We're moving on. They, just from classroom procedure, they knew when an anchor chart was up, it was to be copied into their science notebook, and for them to fill out the K and W sections on their own as a sort of bell ringer activity when they came in the room. Now that automatic, the way that happened took a lot of groundwork in the beginning of the year. So you do have to set up those expectations. But once that happened, I could start class and we could really just dive into our new unit head on, and have this great discussion, get them pumped up for what we're learning about, and get started. I think another thing with my personal experience, I just think it's so important to allow students to put I don't know in these boxes. Because in reality, they may really not know anything about the topic already, and that is okay. And I think we have to. When we're encouraging this inquiry mindset and this scientific thinking, a lot of science started because people didn't know anything about a topic, and we need to honor that and say, you don't have to come in knowing stuff that's what we're here to find. All right, this strategy is easily adapted to any grade. The best thing is like I said, it works for any grade. And this just comes from gradually releasing responsibility from the teacher. You're going to start out and really in the beginning of the year at any grade being more teacher-led and guided. And depending on your grade level, by the end of the year, it can be fully student-led. In the lower grades, I would say this is going to be primarily done by the teacher and whole group, which makes sense. They're just getting exposed to this type of thinking and writing and things like that. And as you move up, I taught 5th grade students can write on the chart or use it in small groups. And in high school, they can do the whole thing. So Fisher also outlined multiple adaptations, that are great. So the KWL Plus, where they summarize, KWHL, where they explain how they know, KLEW, what is their evidence. This I love, just especially in South Carolina with the writing portion they have to do on state testing, providing evidence for what they're writing. I think this strategy would be a great way to reinforce that. KWHHL. This I think would go great in your writing class where they work with hard and heart words and look, for more emotion. KWLQ, which is where they put further questions that they have on the topic. I love that. I wish I had known about that when I was in my science classroom teaching, because gosh, how great is it? We would talk about our further questions, but recording those and even maybe having a place to keep all your further questions up throughout the year, I think would be an awesome way to just encourage this mindset. Those are my references. I used Fisher's 50 Instructional Routines to develop content literacy, and then a picture of anchor chart from Miss Meliss's 2nd grade class. Thank you so much.